3 days no one claimed her, until a little girl pointed, "That's her. Can you be my mama?" The town sat on the edge of a barren desert planet, far from the busy cities of the core worlds. Here, life was about survival, hard work, and a lot of dust. The people of Redridge were used to strange things, but nothing like the event that had just occurred. 3 days ago, a ship had fallen from the sky. It wasn't the kind of crash you'd expect from an old rusted vessel. No, this was a sleek, high-tech ship, one that seemed too advanced for the rough town. It was the kind of thing you'd see in the big cities, not here in the middle of nowhere. The ship had landed just outside town, a few miles from the local medic's office. The townspeople had watched in confusion as smoke rose into the air, but no one dared to go near it. Instead, they left the wreckage to the professionals. The medic, a calm and no-nonsense woman named Clara, had been the one to find the survivor. She was walking out of her clinic early one morning when she noticed a figure lying on the ground near the wreckage. It was a woman. Her clothes were strange, shimmering like something from another world, and she was unconscious. Clara didn't waste time. She ran to her, checking for signs of life. To her surprise, the woman was still breathing, though weak. Clara carefully brought the woman into her clinic where she treated her for the wounds and exhaustion she had suffered in the crash. The woman's injuries weren't serious, but her memory seemed to be. She didn't speak.
Not a word.
She didn't open her eyes for a long time. It was as if she was in a deep sleep, her mind somewhere far away. For 3 days, the town waited, and still, no one came for her. At first, the people of Redridge thought she might be a thief, or worse, a spy from one of the rival colonies. But as the days passed, their suspicion faded, replaced by curiosity. No one knew who she was or where she came from. It wasn't like anyone would claim her, though. In Redridge, the law was thin, and people kept to themselves. Strangers were rare, and when they did appear, they were usually trouble. The woman remained in Clara's clinic, silent and unmoving, and the town moved on, as it always did. But something about the situation felt off. The sheriff, a tall, quiet man named Jace, was particularly uneasy. He had seen a lot in his time, but a woman like this, one who didn't speak, didn't seem to be from anywhere he knew, made him uneasy. On the 3rd day, when it seemed like the woman might never wake, a small voice broke through the silence. Maya, the sheriff's young daughter, had been running errands for her father when she wandered into the clinic. She was just 7 years old, with wide, innocent eyes and an endless curiosity. She was used to the adults talking in hushed tones, used to the stories of lawlessness and adventure that filled the air in Redridge, but she had a certain way of looking at the world, a way of seeing things that others didn't. That morning she had come into the clinic with a bag of herbs for Clara. She didn't expect to see the woman in the bed, but when her eyes landed on the pale face, something stirred inside her. She stepped closer, her tiny feet barely making a sound on the wooden floor. The woman's features were soft, almost peaceful, but there was something about her that felt different. Without a word, Maya reached out and gently touched the woman's hand. It was warm. Not hot, but warm. The woman stirred slightly, her fingers twitching just enough for Maya to notice. Then, to Maya's surprise, the woman's eyes fluttered open. They were dark, almost black, and seemed to see right through her. The woman blinked, as if confused, and then her gaze shifted toward the little girl standing by her side. Maya smiled up at her, her face lighting up. "That's her. Can you be my mama?" They felt like they had been there all along, as if they were meant to be said. The woman's eyes widened, and for a brief moment she seemed to understand what Maya meant. She tried to speak but couldn't. Her voice was just a faint whisper. "Mama?" Maya repeated, tilting her head, a puzzled look on her face. "You can be my mama, can't you?" Clara, who had been standing nearby, heard the words and froze. She had heard of children speaking nonsense before, but this wasn't nonsense. Maya was serious as a child could be. Clara stepped closer, her gaze shifting between the woman in the bed and the girl at her side. I don't know, Maya," Clara said softly, trying to keep the tone light, but her voice betrayed the weight of the situation. "She doesn't know you, and she doesn't know where she is." Maya didn't seem to care. She stood there, looking at the woman with an intense, almost knowing expression. The woman, still struggling to find her voice, gave a small nod, as if agreeing with Maya's words. It was as though something inside her had clicked. She wasn't sure why she felt it, but there was a connection. A deep, undeniable connection between her and this child. Maya looked up at Clara with a smile that could light up the whole town. "She's my mama. I know it." Clara watched the scene unfold before her, her mind racing. How could Maya possibly know something like that? And yet, in that moment, it seemed so real. She had seen strange things in her time, but nothing like this. There was something about the way the woman looked at Maya, the way she seemed to understand. "Maybe," Clara murmured, stepping back. "Maybe she is." The sheriff's daughter, full of innocence and a strange certainty, had spoken the words that no one had dared to say. It was as if Maya had known something about this woman that no one else did, and as Clara looked down at Maya, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. There was more to this than a simple crash. There was something bigger happening here, something that no one in Redridge was prepared for. But for now, the woman was awake, and Maya had found someone she believed was her mama. As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows over Redridge, Clara knew this was just the beginning of something none of them could have ever imagined. For the next few days, the woman remained in the clinic, still recovering from the crash that had brought her to this strange town. Her memories were fragmented, like pieces of a puzzle scattered across her mind. She couldn't remember who she was, where she came from, or how she had ended up on this planet. All she knew was that there was something familiar about Maya. Something in the little girl's eyes made her feel as though she had known her for a long time. Maya, in her innocence, seemed to believe without question that the woman was her mother. She would sit by the woman's bedside, talking to her about her day, telling her about the little adventures she'd had, and asking questions about things the woman couldn't answer. Despite the woman's confusion, a strange warmth filled her when Maya smiled at her. It felt right, somehow, as though she had always belonged here, in this little town, with this child. Clara, the town's medic, was growing more concerned by the day. She had treated many people over the years, but this woman was different. There was an air of mystery surrounding her that Clara couldn't shake. The woman's body was healing, but her mind was locked in a state of confusion, unable to recall her past. It wasn't just the woman's condition that troubled Clara, though. The way Maya acted toward her, as if she had always known her, was unsettling. How could a little girl be so certain about something like that? One afternoon, as Clara sat in the clinic going over some medical records, Maya came rushing in, her face lit up with excitement. The woman had been resting, but as soon as Maya saw her, she ran to her side. "Mama," Maya called out, her voice full of joy. "Guess what? I found a flower, and it's just like the ones from the big city." The woman blinked in confusion. "The big city?" Maya nodded eagerly. "The city you told me about. You said it was so big that you couldn't see the end of it. You promised me one day we could go there." Her smile faded a little as she looked at the woman. "You don't remember?" She didn't remember. She didn't remember a city, or promises, or anything that Maya was talking about. Yet, somehow, there was a faint sense of recognition in the girl's words. Something deep inside her stirred, but it was still buried beneath the fog of her lost memories. I'm sorry, Maya," the woman said quietly, her voice soft and uncertain. "I don't remember." Maya's face fell, her excitement dimming. "It's okay, Mama," she said, her voice full of innocence and understanding. "I know you will. You'll remember soon." Clara watched the exchange from the doorway, her heart heavy. She could see the connection between them, the way Maya so desperately wanted this woman to be her mother, and the woman, though she didn't remember anything, seemed to want to believe it too. But there was a nagging question in Clara's mind. Why did Maya feel so sure? How could she be so certain that this woman was the one? And why did the woman seem to have such a powerful pull toward the child? That night, after Maya had gone to bed, Clara stayed behind in the clinic, watching the woman sleep. She wasn't sure what she was waiting for, but something told her that this woman's arrival in Redridge wasn't just a random accident. There was something more at play here, something bigger than they could understand. Clara's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden noise from the street outside. A loud rumbling sound, like the roar of engines, echoed through the town. She rushed to the window and saw several vehicles approaching, their headlights cutting through the darkness. A chill ran down her spine. Bounty hunters? Clara had seen their type before. They were ruthless, cold, and always looking for someone to capture or destroy. Her first instinct was to lock the door and keep the woman hidden. But where could she hide? Redridge was a small town, and there was no place that would remain secret for long. The vehicles pulled into the town square, and several figures stepped out, clad in dark armor. They didn't look like the usual travelers that came through Redridge. These were professionals, trained hunters, and they weren't here for a friendly visit. Clara hurried to the woman's bedside, her heart racing. She knew the bounty hunters were after her, but why? And what did they want with her? The woman stirred as Clara approached. She was awake now, her eyes wide with fear. "They've come for me," the woman whispered, as though she had known it all along. Clara's gaze softened. "Who are they? Why are they after you?" "I don't know," the woman replied, her voice filled with uncertainty. "But they've been chasing me for a long time. I don't know what they want, but I can't let them take me." Her eyes flickered toward the door. "They're here for something inside of me." Before Clara could ask what the woman meant, there was a loud knock at the clinic door. "Open up, medic!" a voice called out from the other side. "We're here for the woman. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Clara's heart pounded in her chest. She knew she couldn't fight these men. She wasn't a soldier, and they were well armed and trained. Her only option was to hide the woman, protect her for as long as she could. But how? Maya's soft voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mama? What's happening?" The woman's gaze locked with Maya's, and for the first time since waking up, something seemed to snap into place. The woman reached out, pulling Maya toward her. "You need to go, Maya," she said softly, her voice firm yet gentle. "You need to hide." Maya didn't understand, but she could sense the urgency in the woman's voice. Clara knelt down and gently took Maya's hand, leading her into the back of the clinic. "I'll keep you safe," Clara whispered, though she wasn't sure she could. The woman, alone now, stood up from her bed. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. The bounty hunters were getting closer, and soon they would break down the door. She had to act quickly. Her mind raced, and in that moment, something strange happened. The woman's body seemed to come alive with energy. Her senses sharpened, and a strange power surged through her. The technology embedded in her skin, whatever it was, began to hum with life. It was as if her very being was preparing for something. With a deep breath, the woman moved toward the door, determined to face whatever came next. For Maya, for herself. She would not be taken without a fight. The night stretched on, and the woman stood in the small clinic, listening to the distant sounds of the bounty hunters moving closer. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on her chest, but despite the fear, there was a growing sense of determination in her heart. She had to protect Maya, she had to protect this town, and most of all, she had to understand who she was and why she was being hunted. Clara was in the back room, trying to keep Maya calm. The little girl didn't understand everything, but she knew enough to feel the tension in the air. She clung to Clara, her small hands tightly gripping the older woman's sleeve, as the sounds of the bounty hunters echoed through the streets. Maya's wide eyes were filled with questions, but Clara didn't have any answers. She only knew that they had to hide and wait for the danger to pass. Meanwhile, the woman was alone, standing in the clinic's front room, her hands trembling slightly. It was as though a storm was gathering inside her, something deep and powerful stirring within her that she couldn't yet control. Her body had changed in ways she didn't understand. Her senses were sharper, her movements faster, and her mind was clearer than it had been since she woke up. It was as though she had access to some hidden power within her, a part of herself that she didn't know existed. She moved quietly toward the door and pressed her ear against it. The bounty hunters were close now, just outside. She could hear their voices, cold and commanding, as they prepared to break down the door. "Time's up!" one of the hunters growled. "We're getting the woman, one way or another." She didn't know what these men wanted from her, but she knew she couldn't let them take her. Not without a fight. As she moved away from the door, she felt a strange tugging sensation inside her mind, as if something was trying to reach her. She closed her eyes, concentrating, and for a brief moment she felt an intense connection to something far away, a place she couldn't place. It was as if her mind was pulling her toward a memory, a piece of her past that had been locked away. Suddenly, a flash of images rushed through her mind. A city filled with towering buildings, streets bustling with people, and the hum of advanced technology filling the air. There were flashes of her own hands, manipulating machines with ease, and people who looked at her with fear and awe. She could see their faces, but their names eluded her. She knew she was someone important, someone powerful, but the details were hazy, like a dream fading with the dawn. Her eyes snapped open, and she stumbled back, her heart racing. The images were gone, but the sense of something hidden inside her remained. There was more to her past than she had realized, and the bounty hunters were only a small part of the puzzle. The woman's attention snapped back to the door as the bounty hunters began to make their move. The first blow came suddenly, with a loud crash as the door splintered under the force of a heavy kick. She didn't have much time left. With a deep breath, the woman stepped toward the back room where Clara and Maya were hiding. She had to make a decision: run and hide, or stand and fight. But she knew, deep down, that she couldn't run anymore. She had to face whatever was coming, even if she didn't fully understand it. "Maya," she whispered softly as she entered the back room. The little girl looked up at her with wide eyes, her fear evident. "Stay close to me, okay?" Maya nodded, but she didn't speak. She had sensed the change in the woman, a new strength in her that she hadn't seen before. Maya trusted her more than anything, and though she didn't fully understand the danger, she knew that the woman would protect her. Clara was standing by the window, peering through the thin curtains, watching the hunters approach. Her expression was tense, her brow furrowed with concern. "They're here," Clara murmured, glancing back at the woman. "What do we do now?" The woman took a step forward, her jaw set in determination.
"We fight," she said simply.
There was no fear in her voice, only a calm resolve. Clara's eyes widened. "Fight? With what? We can't go up against them. They're armed and trained for this." "I don't know how, but I can," the woman replied, her voice steady. "I'm not the person I used to be. There's something inside me. I can feel it." Clara's confusion only deepened, but there was no time for questions. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and the bounty hunters were almost at the door. The woman moved to the center of the room and closed her eyes, focusing on the strange sensations coursing through her body. It was as if she could sense everything around her. The movements of the hunters outside, the air shifting as they positioned themselves, even the faintest sound of their breathing. It was as if her body had become attuned to the world in a way she had never experienced before. She raised her hand almost instinctively and concentrated. Her fingers began to hum with energy, a faint glow emanating from them. She reached out, her mind connecting with the technology embedded in her skin. It was a strange feeling, like something clicking into place, and suddenly the clinic's lights flickered. The air grew charged with energy. Outside, the bounty hunters had broken through the door. They stepped into the clinic, their boots heavy on the floor. The woman opened her eyes just as they entered, and in an instant the lights in the room flared brighter. A surge of energy rippled through the clinic, pushing the hunters back. The first man stumbled, his eyes wide with shock, but the others quickly recovered. They reached for their weapons, but before they could react, the woman moved. Her speed was almost too fast for the human eye to follow, and she was on them in an instant. She kicked the closest hunter in the chest, sending him flying across the room. The others reached for their blasters, but the woman was already moving again, faster than they could react. She grabbed one of the bounty hunters by the arm and twisted, hearing a sharp crack as his arm broke. He screamed in pain, but before he could recover, she used his momentum against him, throwing him into the wall with a force that shook the entire room. The remaining hunter hesitated, clearly unnerved by her sudden strength. "Stay back," the woman warned, her voice cold and firm. "This is your only warning." The last hunter took a step forward, his hand gripping his blaster, but before he could fire, the woman reached out with a burst of energy, sending a shockwave through the air that knocked him off his feet. He landed hard on the ground, his weapon skidding across the floor. Breathing heavily, the woman stood over the incapacitated hunters, her heart still racing. She had done it. She had fought back and won. But something inside her knew that this was just the beginning. There was more to her past, more to the power within her, and she was only beginning to understand it. She turned to Clara and Maya, who were watching her in awe. "We need to leave," the woman said, her voice steady, but there was a flicker of uncertainty behind her eyes. "There's more coming. I don't know who they are, but they'll be back. We need to go, now." Clara nodded, her eyes wide with shock, but there was no time for questions. They had to leave. And as they stepped out into the night, the woman knew that the path ahead would be dangerous, but for the first time since she had arrived in Red Ridge, she felt ready for whatever was coming. The night air was heavy with tension as the woman, Clara, and Maya made their way through the dark streets of Red Ridge. The bounty hunters had been defeated, but the threat wasn't over. She could feel it, deep within her. Something bigger was coming, something even more dangerous than the men they had just faced. The woman had never been one to run, but the situation was different now. Her mind, though clearer than it had been since she woke up, was still full of questions. Who was she? Why was she being hunted? And most importantly, what was her connection to Maya? As they moved quietly through the narrow streets, the woman could hear the distant sound of engines revving. She knew it wasn't just the bounty hunters that were after her anymore. There were others, people with more power and resources than any of the hunters could have. The feeling in the pit of her stomach grew heavier. They were closing in, and they weren't going to stop until they had what they wanted. "We can't keep running," Clara said softly, glancing nervously around them. "They'll track us." "We need a plan." The woman's mind raced. She knew Clara was right. Running wouldn't solve anything. They needed answers, and they needed to find them quickly. She turned to Clara, her expression hardening. I don't know who they are, but I think they're connected to me, she said, her voice low and steady. I'm not just some survivor. There's more to me than that. I don't remember everything, but I know I've been part of something bigger. Something that makes me dangerous to them. Clara frowned, her brow furrowed in confusion. But you said you didn't remember anything. How do you know this? I don't know, the woman admitted, but it's like a feeling in my bones. I can feel it, like a part of me is still locked away. When I fought those men earlier, it was like I tapped into something inside me, something I've always had but never understood. Maya, who had been walking silently beside them, looked up at the woman with wide eyes. Are you really my mama? The woman's heart twisted at the question. It wasn't the first time Maya had asked, but each time it felt more real, more urgent. She had no memory of being Maya's mother, but there was something in the way the girl looked at her that made her feel connected to her, as though their destinies had intertwined long before they had ever met. I don't know, Maya, the woman said softly, her voice tinged with sadness. But I promise you, I'm going to keep you safe. Clara reached down and squeezed Maya's hand, offering her a reassuring smile, but the woman could see the worry in her eyes. They were in danger, and no amount of safety promises could change that. As they reached the outskirts of town, the sounds of engines grew louder. The woman's instincts told her they didn't have much time. She could feel the presence of someone else, someone powerful, drawing closer. The hair on the back of her neck stood up, and she knew it wasn't just the bounty hunters coming for her. It was something worse. Stay close, she said, her voice hardening with resolve. We're not running anymore. We're facing this. What do we do? The woman didn't have an answer. She didn't know what to do. But there was one thing she did know. She wasn't going to let them take Maya. Not now, not ever. The woman turned to face the road ahead, her mind working through the pieces of the puzzle that were still missing. She needed to remember. She needed to unlock the part of her that had been buried, hidden from her for so long. But she didn't have the luxury of time. They were coming. A shadow appeared at the edge of the road, a figure silhouetted against the faint light of the distant horizon.
The woman tensed, ready for a fight.
But as the figure stepped into the dim light, she froze. It was a woman. She was tall, with long dark hair and a piercing gaze that seemed to see through the woman straight into her soul. The woman's presence was commanding, and despite the woman's own strength, she felt a strange sense of recognition as though she had known her once. Perhaps she still did. You're the one they're after, the woman said in a voice that was calm, almost too calm. You're the one I've been sent to find. The woman took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for the energy that still hummed in her fingertips. Who are you? She demanded. The woman smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was cold, calculating. I'm the one who's been keeping an eye on you, and you're not going to escape this time. The woman's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know who this woman was, but she knew she was dangerous. And she was here for a reason the woman still didn't fully understand. What do you want from me? The woman asked, her voice steady despite the rising fear inside her. The woman in front of her didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a step closer, her gaze never leaving the woman's face. You're part of something bigger than you realize, she said softly. And now you're part of something bigger than you can control. The words sent a chill down the woman's spine. There was something about this woman, something unsettling, like she was speaking truths the woman wasn't ready to hear. But before she could react, the woman spoke again. Maya, the woman said softly, her eyes shifting toward the little girl who had been standing silently beside Clara. She's not just a child, she's a key to everything. The woman's blood ran cold. She didn't understand what the woman meant, but the words struck a deep, unfamiliar chord within her. Maya was important, more important than she had ever known. And now the woman knew that she had to protect her. But from what? And from whom? Suddenly the woman felt a surge of energy inside her, more powerful than anything she had felt before. It was as though everything was coming together. The strange abilities, the memories that had started to resurface, and the connection to Maya. With a flash of movement, the woman lunged at the woman in front of her, her hands glowing with energy. The woman tried to fight back, but she wasn't fast enough. The woman's energy surged through the air, pushing her back. You won't win, the mysterious woman snarled, struggling against the force. You can't escape what you are. She couldn't afford to. She had to protect Maya, no matter the cost. With one final push, she sent the woman flying back, her energy crackling in the air around them. The mysterious woman hit the ground hard, but she didn't stay down for long. The woman turned to Clara and Maya, her heart pounding. "We have to leave. Now." But before they could move, more figures emerged from the shadows surrounding them. There was no escaping this time. The woman had finally unlocked her past, but it was more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Now she had to make a choice: face her past and the forces that sought to control her, or protect Maya and run, knowing that she might never be free again. As the figures closed in, the woman stood tall, ready to face whatever came next.